The diner went silent the moment he walked in, because everyone in that town knew the rules. When Dominic Marchetti entered a room, you did not look him in the eye, you did not speak unless spoken to, and you certainly did not challenge him. But nobody had told that to Elena Reyes, the 24-year-old waitress wiping down table 6 with trembling hands and a spine made of something the whole town seemed to have forgotten existed: courage. He sat down, snapped his fingers without looking up, and said the coffee better be perfect this time, because the last girl who served him got fired for bringing it lukewarm. Elena set the cup down without a word, and when he took a sip and made a face, he smirked and said something cruel about waitresses who thought they were better than their station. She didn't flinch. She looked him dead in the eye and said maybe he'd know a good cup of coffee if his ego didn't take up so much room in his mouth. The diner froze. Someone dropped a fork. Dominic Marchetti, the man 3 counties feared, laughed, a short, ugly bark of disbelief, and said, "Think you're tough? Prove it." He had no idea what he'd just done. If you believe in second chances, if you believe that kindness can survive even in the coldest places, hit that like button right now, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from, share this with someone who needs a reminder that courage doesn't roar, sometimes it just refuses to back down, and subscribe, because this story is about to take you somewhere you won't forget. Elena Reyes hadn't always been a waitress scraping by on tips and pride. 3 years earlier she'd been a nursing student, 1 semester from graduation, working nights at the diner to help pay for her mother's medication. Then her mother passed, the bills didn't, and somewhere between the funeral and the final tuition payment, the dream quietly died. She dropped out. She kept the job. She told herself it was temporary, the way people tell themselves lies that help them survive Tuesdays. Dominic Marchetti had grown up in a different kind of poverty, the kind that teaches you love is a transaction and respect is something you take with your fists if no one hands it to you. By the time he was 40, he ran half the shipping routes on the east side of the city, and men who crossed him disappeared quietly, the way problems do when money and fear work together. He came to that diner every Thursday not because the coffee was good, but because it was the one place left where his mother used to bring him as a boy, before she died and before he became whatever he was now. He never told anyone that. He barely admitted it to himself. So when this waitress, thin, tired-eyed, wearing a uniform 2 sizes too big, mouthed off to him like he was just a man and not a legend people whispered about in fear, something cracked open in him that hadn't moved in 20 years. He should have had her fired on the spot. Instead, he came back the next Thursday. And the one after that. Their exchanges became a strange ritual. He'd insult the coffee, she'd insult his manners, and underneath the sharp words was something neither of them had a name for yet, the discovery that another person could see you clearly and not run. One rainy evening, he stayed after closing, watching her count the register with hands that shook slightly from exhaustion, and he asked, without meaning to sound soft, why a woman sharp enough to speak to him like that was still slinging coffee for minimum wage. She told him about the nursing degree she never finished, about her mother, about the ceiling she kept hitting no matter how hard she worked. He said nothing. But 3 days later, an envelope appeared under the diner's door with enough cash to cover a full semester of tuition, no name attached, no note, nothing but a small hand-drawn coffee cup in the corner. She knew immediately who it was from. She marched into his usual booth the next Thursday and slid the envelope back across the table, told him she didn't need his charity, that she'd earned every hard thing in her life and she'd earn her degree the same way. He looked at her, really looked, and said it wasn't charity, it was an investment in the only person who'd ever told him the truth to his face. She left the envelope. But she also left her guard down, just slightly, just enough for something real to start growing in the space between 2 people who the world had told to never trust anyone. Word got around, the way it always does in small towns and dangerous families alike. Dominic's associates noticed him softening, showing up less angry, staying longer at that rundown diner, asking his driver to wait outside instead of coming in and disrupting whatever peace he'd found in booth 6. His rivals noticed too, and they saw an opportunity in it. A man distracted is a man vulnerable, and vulnerability in Dominic's world got people killed. One night, two men Elena didn't recognize walked into the diner long after closing, when she was alone finishing the last of the cleaning. They asked where Dominic Marchetti liked to sit. She said she didn't know what they were talking about. They didn't believe her. One of them grabbed her wrist hard enough to bruise, told her to stop playing games, and said if she valued her pretty little face she'd start talking. She was terrified, anyone would have been, but somewhere underneath the fear was the same stubborn fire that had once told a mafia boss his ego took up too much room. She spat in the man's face and told him to get out of her diner. That was the moment Dominic walked in, having forgotten his jacket, having come back for the one thing he actually cared about finding there. What he found instead was two of his rivals' men with their hands on the only person who had ever made him feel human. What happened next is not something Elena likes to describe in detail, only that it was fast, and it was final, and afterward Dominic stood in the wreckage of overturned chairs with blood on his knuckles and something entirely new in his eyes, not rage, but terror, the specific terror of realizing exactly how much he had to lose. He drove her to the hospital himself, sat in the waiting room for 6 hours refusing to leave, and when the doctor said she'd be fine, just some bruising and shock, Dominic put his head in his hands and wept for the first time since his mother's funeral. Elena found him like that when she came out, and instead of walking past him the way the old Elena might have, wary of getting closer to danger, she sat down beside him and asked what he was so afraid of. He told her the truth, that he'd spent his whole life building walls so high that nothing could touch him, and somehow a waitress with a smart mouth and a tired heart had found the one door he forgot to lock, and now he was terrified that loving anything meant it could be used against him, that everyone he'd ever protected by staying cold was safer than she'd ever be standing this close to him. She didn't offer easy comfort. She told him that fear like that doesn't get fixed by building the walls back up, it gets fixed by choosing, every single day, to be the kind of man worth someone staying for. She told him about her mother, who used to say that the bravest thing a broken person can do is let themselves be loved without waiting for the other shoe to drop. Dominic sat with that for a long time. Then he told her something he'd never told another living soul, that he wanted out, that he'd wanted out for years, that he didn't know how a man like him walked away from a life like his without it costing him everything, including her. It took 8 months. It cost him money, contacts, and nearly his life twice over as he dismantled pieces of an empire built on fear and handed control to men who at least pretended to have limits he no longer wanted to test. Elena finished her nursing degree during those 8 months, working double shifts and studying at 3 a.m., because some things you finish for yourself no matter who's standing beside you. The diner became something different in that time too, no longer a place where a dangerous man hid from his own reflection, but the place where a woman who refused to be afraid taught him, slowly, patiently, that strength isn't the absence of gentleness, it's the courage to choose gentleness anyway. If this story moved you even a little, if you felt something shift in your chest watching two broken people find their way towards something better, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to believe that people really can change. It means more than you know. And before we get to the ending, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you believe people like Dominic can truly change, or do some walls stay up forever? I read every single one. 2 years later, the diner on 5th Street has a new sign above the door, Elena's, in simple gold letters, because Dominic bought the place and put her name on it the week she officially became a registered nurse. He still sits in booth 6 most Thursdays, coffee exactly the way she makes it, no longer the man the town feared but simply a man who found, in the unlikeliest of places, exactly what he never knew he was looking for. And Elena, when she has a rare quiet moment between shifts at the hospital and helping run the diner she now half owns, still remembers the day a stranger laughed and told her to prove she was tough, never imagining that proving it would mean saving them both.